Okay. Hello. Yeah. Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to P&G IITM Madras Equality Summit, Vannam. Um, it's my pleasure to host this event. Let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Pooja Kumar. I'm proudly working with the P&G FemCare team for the past 4 years. I'm also proud to share that I'm an alumni of IIT Madras and I've completed my chemical engineering from here. Just a brief introduction about what equality and inclusion at P&G is, right? So at P&G, we believe in equal tomorrow. So therefore, we aspire to create a company and a world where equality and inclusion is achievable for all, where respect and inclusion are the cornerstones of our culture. We believe that equal access to opportunities to learn, to grow, to succeed, and to thrive are available to each and every individual in the company. So this is something which I personally feel have been able to achieve through the ENI strategies, the equality and inclusion strategies that's evolved to comprise a holistic one. So we focus on gender equality, LGBTQ plus inclusion, and inclusion of people with disabilities. We personally believe that being visible in our actions and staying anchored in our commitments to our employees, we would be able to continue to drive and enhance our importance in this particular domain and accelerate the change in the diverse communities that we operate in. So if you're curious about where did it all start, right? So P&G's roots in this LGBTQ plus inclusion and advocacy are built on examples set by our own people, right? So these individuals who used their voice to fight intolerance, to tackle the biases, who put themselves at risk for equal treatment and protection, right? So it's in these roots that the journey started. However, the journey has not been easy, nor has it always been right. But the good thing is we've progressed, we've moved forward. So it is because of these few brave employees, often mostly in terms of the times where they were facing strong resistance, helped to change our culture, to shape the company attitude overall, and strengthen our commitment to the LGBTQ plus community. Today, we're using our voice to drive acceptance, inclusion, and a love for humanity. So, what exactly is Gable, right? So Gable began more than 25 years ago as a network for fostering workplace equality among LGBTQ plus employees. Today, it's grown into a supportive and a global community, and it has chapters on 40 countries and including India as well. So these chapters actually represent the diversity of employees as well as strong allies to support individuality and inclusion. We're busting myths, initiating a series of conversations both within the company, internally, and also externally, and taking meaningful steps towards creating a truly inclusive culture where all LGBTQ plus employees and the allies can bring their full selves to work every single day. That being said, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Mr. Vijay Sitlani, who is currently the Vice President of Finance in the Europe Commercial Operations at P&G. He is an out leader who's been advocating equality and inclusion for the LGBTQIA plus inclusion in the corporate workspaces ever since 2016. Please join me in welcoming him for this exclusive conversation. Welcome, Vijay, to Vannam, P&G IIT Madras Equality Summit. We're happy to have you here.
Hi. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today to listen in. It's really valuable time we have asked you for, and I just wanted to call out that I really appreciate it. So to introduce myself, I'm Vijay. I'm the Vice President of Finance at Procter& Gamble, and I'm currently based in Switzerland. I started my career in India, not with P&G, but with KPMG, where I worked for 4 years. I joined P&G at the start of the millennium, which was actually a start of a new life. I did work in India for one of our factories for 1 year, and it was a short stint, after which I moved to Singapore, where I spent the next 10 years. And I did a very diverse set of roles for Procter& Gamble in Singapore. In between, I also relocated to Japan for a year to manage some projects. And back in 2011, I was asked to consider an opportunity in Europe, which was very exciting. It was to actually financially caretake a big brand expansion across many European countries. So I spent 5 years in Switzerland doing that, after which I was offered to take on the chief financial officer role for Procter & Gamble in the UK. I did that for another 4 years, after which I moved back to Switzerland, middle of the pandemic, to the corporate headquarters in 2020. So currently, I'm the Vice President Finance for our European commercial operations, which has oversight on our commercial practices with retailers across the European continent. So while I have been away from India for a very long time, I am always close. I come to visit my father every quarter, and sure enough, P&G in India makes sure that I stay very well connected, especially through forums like this.
That's amazing. That's amazing, Vijay. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of background about you and your career journey as well, right? So Vijay, as you represent P&G today, right? I wanted to quickly kick off our dialogue by asking you, where does LGBTQ plus community feature in P&G's overall people strategy?
Pooja, it's come a long way. Our equality and inclusion strategy comprises of our efforts towards, like you said, gender equality, LGBTQ plus inclusion, and inclusion of people with disabilities. Now, to maximize our efforts, we focus on a few things. One is we focus on driving change. Okay, that's number one. The number one piece on change, after that comes staying anchored in our equality commitments to our employees, people first. Okay. And thirdly is the visibility in our actions, most importantly through our brands and with our business partners. So it's focus on driving change, stay anchored in our commitments to our employees, and using our actions through our brands, which is our biggest source of strength for the external community. Now, within the company, we are driving inclusion, sensitization, and shift in mindset amongst the people for the community through Gable, right? So that's the piece that we want to focus on, driving change. Gable is our affinity network, as you mentioned upfront, for LGBTQ+. It is dedicated to fostering an inclusive support global network, and that includes lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender employees and their allies to contribute to their fullest potential and to bring their whole selves to work every day. We had survey results which basically told us that biggest drain of energy on a person actually goes when they are not able to bring their full selves to work every day because they spend too much time trying to hide who they are. So Gable tries to action change here. Gable began more than 25 years ago as a network for fostering workspace equality for LGBT+ employees. Today, it's grown into a supportive and global community. We've got presence, as you said, in 40 countries and including in India. And apart from what P&G's overall Gable strategy towards its people are, P&G India actually introduced Gable pretty recently. It was only in 2018. But since then, P&G offices and sites in India take up the onus to be visible in Gable efforts. It's very common, for example, to see visuals and pride colors across touch points to keep reinforcing safe spaces, dedicated gender neutral restrooms, for example, regular engagement with the vast ally network to dialogue. And recently, P&G India also introduced an affinity group, which is Out and Proud chapter in India. There are many more examples which we'll talk through as we continue this conversation.
Amazing, amazing. Thanks, Vijay. So Vijay, now that you've mentioned about what P&G does and what is there in the institute, right? So I also wanted to understand how was your experience, right? Could you give us a glimpse about how was your experience in coming out as a out leader in P&G?
This is a question you can imagine through the years that it's been tougher and tougher to answer. But getting more and more comfortable with the way minds and hearts become more open. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Calcutta, in Dehradun, and in Mumbai. Now, I came from a corporate family. I'd say they were pretty forward thinking. So my father spent many, many years in the UK, and my mother used to actually be an air hostess for British Airways, and she traveled the whole world. So I would like to say that they had pretty broad horizons. Yet I grew up very closeted. Now, I joined P&G in India in 2000 when I was about 25 years old. And that really, for me, it marked the beginning of my journey towards being an out leader. Uh, the company did steer my life towards opportunities that helped me overcome my inhibitions. So, for example, in 2001, I moved to Singapore and I was there for 10 years. That's also where I met my partner, and he and I have been together now for 22 years. In 2011, P&G asked me to move to Geneva, and that's where I became involved in Gable for the first time. Let's just say the West gave me the environment to come out, an environment which is now rapidly fostering itself in India. When I moved to the UK in 2016 as the country finance leader, and I spent 4 years there, I also led Gable in the UK. Now I'm back in Geneva. I lead finance for European commercial operations, but for the past 2 years, I have been leading finance globally within Procter & Gamble for Gable, which is what also brings me to talk to you here today. So that's a bit of my glimpse into my journey in P&G as an out leader.
Great, great, Vijay. Delving a little deeper into this, right? What were your initial moments of truth in your journey of coming out? Specifically, what were your biggest challenges before coming out in the society and also at P&G?
Yeah. See, coming out is not a one-time thing. It's something that you will do your whole life as you engage in different connections. So what I'll talk to you about and give you the example about is my initial moment of truth at Procter & Gamble. I came out to only one person because that was my circle of trust. It was to the CFO of Asia, P&G, who was my manager at the time, and he's now retired. I remember I told him for very specific reasons. This was in Singapore. I had to manage my mobility. P&G as a company likes to move you around. You get a lot of international exposure, as I've talked to you on my career journey. And knowing that the time was coming closer in my career where I might need to move out of Singapore, move to a different country, I had to manage my mobility within P&G and ensure that if they thought of sending me to any country on assignment, that I do have a partner. It would need to be a country where we could live safely. It could be a country where I also would need some immigration support for my partner. And it was a hugely tough choice for me to actually come out to my manager because he was Indian. And my biggest challenge was the cultural one, where I just had this perception that anyone I told within my community is someone who would then look down on me or belittle me. So I had to do it because at that point in time, my personal core was with my partner, and I needed to make sure that we did the right thing for both of us. But I still remember that when I told him, I was literally shaking. And the amazing part was that he didn't blink an eye. Okay. When I told him I wanted to talk to him, he actually took me into a conference room. And I think he probably was getting a little bit scared because he thought that I'm going to come to him and resign about something. But when I told him this, I think it was probably some relief for him also because he didn't blink an eye. He just looked at me in his usual style and he said, "So what's the problem?" And to me, it was the biggest sense of relief I ever felt. And after that, he became a solid ally and a mentor for me. It's the first time that in my career I actually got to hear about Gable because it wasn't present in Singapore at that point in time. So he educated me on P&G's LGBTQ plus affinity networks. He also advised me to come out to a small circle of trust. And that support system really helped me through my entire career. They managed my career, and all of them have left the company now, but fortunately not before leaving me in an extremely strong position. So I had a very cool moment of coming out to him.
Completely relatable, Vijay. I think I can understand how the culture of inclusivity is something that every individual can feel in and around the workplace. Um, that being said, Vijay, I also want to understand how do you think organizations play a role in creating a feeling of inclusivity within the company and for the community in the whole?
Yep. I've said it just a couple of questions ago, but I will repeat it because it's important to help everyone understand this is what P&G tries to do to influence inclusivity. We try to drive the force for change. We anchor ourselves in our commitments to our employees, And very importantly, we use our brands as a force for good. Okay, so our brands are very powerful. So a couple of examples, and these are global campaigns. So we have the Pantene campaign of the hair has no gender, and actually used the transsexual celebrity in the UK to advertise Pantene. Okay, it was the first time. We also have Gillette. It was the first shave. That was another campaign. And we had Tide, which is washing detergent, which is the Tide Canada Again campaign. These are all a few examples of how P&G has used brands to drive equality and inclusion in our communities. Now, there are other ways that P&G can contribute. So, for example, in the UK, we had Fairy Liquid, which is dishwashing liquid. We don't sell it in India, but in UK, we did the Fairy campaign where we rebranded the Fairy brand as Fair, okay, which is for equality. And we contributed actually £1 to an external trust, which was the Albert Kennedy Trust, for every bottle of Fairy Liquid purchased by a consumer. Now, what does the Albert Kennedy Trust do? It actually provides shelter to homeless LGBTQ plus youth who have been thrown out of their houses by their parents for coming out. Okay. I'm sure now you can understand the gravity of this. So by doing the FAIR campaign, we actually found a brand for a force for good and contributed to something which would directly help LGBTQ plus youth. And there are many, many more examples like this. I'm sure you can find your own corporate causes to contribute to, your own educational causes to contribute to, but we tend to use our brands as a force for good. The trick is you have to do it consistently. Okay, you can't do it one off and then just leave it. Okay, it's like having a haircut. You can't have a haircut once in your life, right? You have to keep doing it to groom yourself. So the trick is to do it consistently. We now, for example, have studies in North America that show that LGBTQ plus consumers drive at least 10% higher P&G brand consumption versus the average population across the brands we sell. Can you imagine if we targeted these consumers specifically via brand advertising? Aside from the sheer benefit that it brings to business building, it would be another huge way to show this community that we are actually a force for equality and inclusion. So that's how organizations like ours play a huge role in creating a feeling of inclusivity within the company and for the community.
Understand, Vijay. While globally, P&G has made strides of progress, but the external landscape in India only allowed us to full-fledged embrace our journey of LGBTQ plus inclusion only over the last 4 years. Would you like to share with us about some of the initiatives that have helped us make substantial progress already?
Absolutely. In fact, since the regulations changed in India and the external landscape changed, I have, sitting from afar, been so impressed by the rapid movements that P&G in India has made towards LGBTQ plus inclusion. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. This particular one just struck such a chord in me because this is not even available sometimes in the more developed countries. Okay. P&G India offered an all-company comprehensive financial and medical benefits transformed into a fully inclusive and equality-based program. So that extends to not only married couples, but also to partners of our LGBTQ plus employees. I know certain countries in the world across different companies, which while even the laws accept LGBTQ plus marriage, they don't have same-sex benefits for the employees. So for India to do that and P&G India to do that for financial and medical benefits to me was truly heart-opening. We also have the partnership with Pride Circle for Rise 22. Rise 22 is India's premier LGBTQ plus job fair and conference where LGBTQ plus job seekers can meet companies, and P&G has a partnership with them. However, as I keep saying, the most important part of our journey is through our brands. So, for example, the Vicks Touch of Care campaign in India traveled the entire world. If you have it, Pooja, I'd like to ask you if you can share that video to the audience right now.
Yes, Vijay. Let me pull it up.
मम्मी नाराज तो होने ही वाली, वो तो चाहती कि मैं डॉक्टर ही बनूं। इसने हॉलीडेज खत्म और बोर्डिंग स्कूल शुरू, एक दिन भी एक्स्ट्रा रुकने नहीं दिया। मम्मी भी ना। वो तो चाहती कि मैं डॉक्टर ही बनूं, इसने हॉलीडेज खत्म और बोर्डिंग स्कूल शुरू, एक दिन भी एक्स्ट्रा रुकने नहीं दिया। मम्मी भी ना। मम्मी ने अपनी लाइफ अपने आप ही बनाई। 18 साल की थी जब उनके मैंने अपने पापा को कभी देखा नहीं, और मेरी असली माँ वो बहुत बीमार रहती थी। उनके बारे में सिर्फ एक ही दिन याद है जो मैं कभी भुला नहीं पाती। एक दिन कुछ लोग आए और उन्हें एम्बुलेंस में ले गए। फिर वो कभी वापस ही नहीं आई। फिर एक दिन मम्मी आई। बहुत प्यार से मुझे अपनी गोद में बिठाया और मुझे अपने घर ले गई। तबीयत खराब थी तो पूरी रात मेरे साथ बैठी रही। सुबह मम्मी ने एक सुंदर सी रेड फ्रॉक पहनाई, मेरे लिए ढेर सारे चिप्स बनाए। मम्मी के साथ 10 साल हो गए। अब तो मम्मी मम्मी कम और दोस्त ज्यादा बन गई। संडे हम दोनों का फेवरेट दिन है। बालों में तेल लगाने के बाद दोपहर में मेरा फेवरेट लंच, कड़ी चावल, और रात में हॉरर फिल्म। डर लगता है, पर मम्मी होती है ना तो नहीं लगता। ये है मेरी मम्मी, है ना प्यारी। मम्मी ने लाइफ में इतने प्रॉब्लम्स देखे, कितना कुछ सहा है, पर फिर भी उन्होंने हमेशा मेरा ख्याल रखा है। सिविक्स बुक में तो लिखा है कि सबके लिए बेसिक राइट सेम होते हैं, फिर मम्मी को क्यों नहीं है? इसलिए मैं डॉक्टर नहीं, लॉयर बनूंगी, मेरी मम्मी के लिए।
Indeed, it was a heart-touching video, right? Moving on, Vijay. I Now that we spoke about how our brands have brought in the aspect of equality and inclusion through ads and different avenues, I also want to understand why is it important we focus and enable equality and inclusion in our teams and work groups as well? Why do you think it's important for us to do that?
I think the example of the Vicks Touch of Care campaign shows you exactly how important it is, just from a human rights perspective, externally, to give everyone the same legal rights at least. But in the workplace, inclusivity, as I said, enables people to bring their full selves to work. So imagine the individual who spends even 20% of their energy trying to hide who they are because they hear negative remarks and they fear being ridiculed. Can you imagine that time can instead be used much more productively to drive the business? Diversity of views is encouraged for the right business solutions. You can enable that diversity of views to come alive if you enable equality and inclusion in the workplace. A couple of statistics. In our 2020 employee survey, 10% of people identify as LGBTQ plus. Can you imagine how many don't self-identify? 60% of LGBT people hear negative remarks at least a few times a year. LGBTQ plus population in any survey score is lower than the general population on equal opportunity. And there are 30% of people who identify as LGBTQ plus said that they are out to no one. So there are enough statistics to tell you that we all have some way to go to make everyone feel equality and included, but it grounds itself that in the workplace, you need to be able to enable everyone to bring their full selves to work. If you bring your full to work, you bring your full energy to work instead of wasting any energy that you have on trying to hide who you are. So, I'm not going to give you 4 or 5 more different reasons. I'm sure there are hundreds of them. But to me, it's the energy that you waste. And that energy needs to be through inclusion. If we make everyone feel equal, we make everyone feel included, then we make everyone bring their full selves to work without fear of ridicule, without wasting energy on hiding who they are.
Right. Well said, Vijay. On that note, do you think being open and out in the organization now positively affected you at work? And following on, how do you think corporates can build and strengthen a conducive environment for everyone to feel safe?
So, has it affected me positively at work? Like I said, this company steered my life in a particular direction, which was the beginning of a new era for me. I almost feel like joining P&G in the year 2000 at the start of the millennium was the start of a new life. So I give you a couple of ways in which it positively affected me and my work. So when I moved to Europe, there was only a handful of people who knew about me. Okay. Because they had to support administrative processes, for example, like all the HR processes, the immigration processes. But in Europe, they did have a Gable Geneva organization. And since then, Gable has been a huge support system for me within P&G. However, what I have learned on Gable is that you get as much as you give. It's a small organization, and so everyone who is part of it needs to be involved and has to contribute. But the dividends are rich. So in the UK, I strengthened the Gable setup. In return, it rewarded me with internal and external events, networking and exposure and support forums, which made me so much more comfortable in my own skin and has given me a lot more confidence over the years not to hide who I am, to bring my full self to work. So I remember in the UK, my HR leader, she asked me to go to the Stonewall conference in London. I didn't even know what it was, but what I experienced was the biggest sense of community I ever saw. 800 plus LGBTQ plus people from various professional organizations in one place, celebrating their corporate diversity cause and sharing experiences and challenging. It was just amazing. With the company support system, I can now introduce myself fearlessly within my work groups. When people come and ask me to talk in different forums, that slide, which only ever had my career history, now has a photo of myself, my partner, and my dog. Okay. I don't have to produce the standard one, which has a person with their husband or wife and kids showing happily married families in the stereotypical definition. But I feel fearless to come and give them my own reality. I've also literally changed my way of thinking. The way I now think is I am normal. Others are not normal if they have a problem with my normalcy. Okay. I also reached that stage in my life and career where I don't do what makes me uncomfortable. If I feel I'm going to be in a situation full of judgmental people, I remove myself from that situation. Life is too short to waste time on that. So those are my experience on how this has positively affected my journey. But corporates can build and strengthen a conducive ecosystem internally by being visible, being vocal, being vigilant, and being well versed in the issues. Externally within our communities, partners like media, and most importantly, by leveraging the strength and voice of our brands to be a force for good. I know you just looked at the Vicks Touch of Care campaign, but Pooja, I think this would be a good opportunity to show everyone also the other example that we have on Pantene.
Right. Yes, Vijay, let me pull it up.
Is always be herself, never be afraid to step out and exist as the person that she is.
Our family motto is everybody loves everybody no matter what path you follow. It means I can be who I am no matter what. It doesn't matter because everybody loves me. My advice is just be yourself and don't let anybody tell you who you are.
Okay. Yes, I think there was this little technical glitch in the beginning part of the video, but I think the message was very clear, Vijay, on how our brands do foster the sense of equality and inclusion. Right. Moving on, Vijay, wanted to understand how can allies play a good role in this journey of inclusion? How can they take this journey forward?
I lead Gable for finance for P&G, and we have this motto, which is say it, show it, and do it. So allies play a very, very important role in this journey of inclusion, because if the population which is self-identified is so small, and the population which is non-self-identified is also so small, then you need the role of the allies to be able to enable everyone. Okay. So we talk about the role of the ally being to say it, show it, and do it. What does say it mean? Say you are an ally. Say you support the community. Speak out when you hear people making fun of your LGBTQ plus friends or family. Show it. Now, in showing it, we have a lot of corporate tools a company like us has, which basically show that you are an ally, such as we have lanyards which carry rainbow color lanyards for our badges. We have rainbow stickers for our laptops. We have placards for our desks. So just by showing those rainbow lanyards on yourself, on your badges, on your desks, on your laptops, basically tell everyone that you are an ally and you don't have a problem with this. Okay, so that's a big way to show it. Okay, and lastly, and very importantly, is do it, which is turn up at Pride events. Now, so many countries have Pride events, including India. So allies and friends of LGBTQ plus people should actually say it, show it, but also do it, which is turn up, be physical at those Pride events. Okay. For example, our company's chief equality and inclusion officer is an out lesbian. Okay. But her biggest ally is her straight colleague who travels with her to every LGBTQ plus event that she goes to. Now, what more strength can a person derive than from an ally who actually supports you and who will say it, which is support you by actually being vocal about it, show it by using all sorts of corporate cues and tools that we have, and then do it by physically showing up. Okay, so allies play a huge role in this journey of inclusion, and I just encourage everyone of you, whether you work in a corporate or whether you work in an educational institution, to be an ally is to say it, to show it, and to do it.
Makes sense, Vijay. Vijay, I was actually getting a panel request on if we could play the video again because there was some disturbance in the first part of the video. Can I go ahead and
Yes,
play it again?
absolutely, absolutely.
Yes. So, yeah.
Sawyer is an old soul. She is our spunky and creative kiddo. Sawyer also happens to be a transgender girl. I remember the first time she was out in the community wearing the clothing she wanted in her hair, and she kind of was herself. And that was the first day where I saw her. She has always been super gender creative, and hair has been a big part of her transition. Once she told us that she identified as a girl, she immediately wanted to grow her hair out.
It made me feel good and confident, and it made my insides match my outsides.
This was a kid who knew who she was from such a young age. And as a mom, you always worry about your kids being loved and accepted. So I'm always telling Sawyer to never hide who she is, always be herself, never be afraid to step out and exist as the person that she is.
Our family motto is everybody loves everybody no matter what path you follow. It means I can be who I am no matter what. It doesn't matter because everybody loves me. My advice is just be yourself and don't let anybody tell you who you are.
Amazing. Yep. Thank you so much, Vijay. I think these were really insightful. So we actually also have gotten a couple of questions from our students out here. Maybe I would take a couple of more moments to ask them, and we could hear your perspectives on the same, Vijay. Would that be okay with you?
Yes.
Great. So first question, Vijay, we wanted to understand from you is that LGBTQIA plus people face a lot of discrimination and harassment from colleagues and peers in their workspaces. What are the measures that can be taken to stop it?
We have this training in Procter & Gamble called the emotional moment of truth. And when I attended that training, it was eye-opening for me because the emotional moment of truth is how you treat people. And for me, I always thought, treat people the way I would want to be treated. But what the emotional moment of truth teaches you is don't treat people the way you would want to be treated. Treat people the way they would want to be treated. Okay. And for people who face discrimination and harassment, no kitchen logic. Basically, they want to be treated with respect. So in corporate cultures, what are the measures that can be taken? What we learned from Gable experiences that the most solid driver of corporate culture to stop discrimination and harassment is leadership tone. So that we call the tone from the top. I've learned this personally because I've seen myself that when the tone from the top is strong, then these things are taken extremely seriously. So the leadership tone from the top, which is using inclusive language, writing the right policies, having vocal allies. These are key things that colleagues or peers in workspaces can do to stop the discrimination, to stop the harassment. So I'll just repeat it again. It starts with leadership tone, and that leadership tone then translates into the enablers, which is basically inclusive culture, progressive policies, and vocal allies. And within this, progressive policies are actually super important because progressive policies bind every employee in the company towards a contract to actually act in line with those progressive policies. So for example, in Procter & Gamble, we have the P&G Worldwide Business Conduct Manual. Okay. And the Worldwide Business Conduct Manual, the way it's framed, is very heartening to me because it prevents discrimination and harassment, not only for LGBTQ plus people, but for everyone. The same standard applies to everyone. That's a very progressive policy. It doesn't matter what. And as an employee, it's a contract that I'm bound to. If I break the Worldwide Business Conduct Manual, then whoever I break it towards has a full right to escalate against me, right? And that comes from a leadership tone from the top that creates these policies. So these are the kind of measures which start with leadership tone going into progressive policies that then create the culture and create vocal allies. That's what I would say.
Right, Vijay. Completely understand that. That being said, there was another question that was following up on that. What are some of the measures that one could adopt to create an inclusive workplace culture? So could you help there?
I think it goes back to what I said on say it, show it, and do it. Okay, which is say you are an ally, show you are an ally, do things which portray you as an ally. But in the workspace culture, it has to be a day-to-day thing, because you can't as an ally be saying every day that you are an ally for LGBTQ plus people, because that's not only who you are, right? You have your own families, you have your own life. Yes, you support the LGBTQ plus cause, but saying it and every day and doing it every day is probably not possible, right? So in a corporate culture, the way to do that, I would say two most important things is one, use inclusive language. Okay. Using inclusive language basically means referring to individuals without knowing who they are, but not asking them about your wife or your husband, or about asking you about your partner or your significant other. Obviously, if you know the person well enough, then you can. But if you don't know a person well enough, then you can't presuppose and stereotype them into one bucket where you assume that they have a husband or a wife. They could be having a significant other or a partner, and you don't know about that. So instead of making them feel embarrassed or odd or trying to hide who they are, use inclusive language for an inclusive workspace culture. The other piece is just the corporate cues that we offer, right? So we talked about rainbow colored lanyards. We talked about laptop stickers. We talked about affinity network. We talked about workspace branding. We talked about things like gender neutral toiletries and visual cues, etc. These are things that can be visible on a daily basis. So for an LGBTQ plus individual to come into a workspace and see these visual cues that are there, it's a complementary to the allies who say it, show it, do it, but cannot say it, show it, and do it every day. For that, it enables individuals of LGBTQ plus community to come and see those visual cues in your workspace every single day, to be very energized by the fact that whoever is talking in management or amongst your workplace teams are talking using inclusive language. These are the things that make great strides towards an inclusive workspace culture on a daily basis.
Well said. Yes, Vijay. I'm sure this would benefit a lot of the audience who are watching this particular masterclass. Moving on to the next question, Vijay. How can students in their college campuses and young members in their organization best support the team members that they work with and lead as well?
Excellent question. I think bullying, harassment, exclusion of LGBT people in educational institutions is a worldwide problem. Okay, it's faced by a significant portion of LGBT students, and it's often driven by stigma and prejudice rooted in deep cultural beliefs and about gender roles, masculinity, femininity. I think the biggest advantage of your generation is that you live in a very progressive time in India. 10 years ago, I would have pleaded with you to educate yourself that being gay is not a disease. Now I would encourage you to embrace the progressiveness of our times and make as many gay friends as you can. Use inclusive language. Don't press your friends and teams about whether they have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. If you know them well enough, then fine. Otherwise, imagine the pressure you put someone under simply just by assuming they are straight. You might not have the visual cues available to you in student life to show that you are an ally, but you can definitely say it. You can talk empathetically about your understanding of LGBTQ plus inclusion. You can talk openly about having friends who are LGBTQ plus if you have them. If you suspect someone is gay, don't make fun of them behind their backs. Instead, embrace the diversity of thinking that they might offer and encourage their ideas. Include them deliberately in your teams. You cannot imagine how grateful they may be. And I mean, at the end of the day, you might not have the corporate cues, but you know enough corporates around you to be able to develop the visual cues in your educational institutions that help them to feel included on a day-to-day basis.
Well said, Vijay. I think I've personally also seen such instances happen around me, and the awareness and the education, I think, through such forums, such lectures and classes that we are driving, will definitely educate people to understand and be more empathetic about how we look at people around us. Thought-provoking, Vijay. Yes, thank you so much for that. There's one other question. How can we as individuals create awareness in the public regarding the importance of inclusivity in the LGBTQ plus community in the industry?
Good. I don't think everyone has energy enough or strong enough to go and stand on podiums and talk about the inclusivity of LGBTQ plus community in the industry, right? Like we talked, visual cues are there, those to be there on a daily basis. Those visual clues show LGBTQ plus individuals on a daily basis, even if people are not talking about it, that they are welcome in society. Okay, so you have to say it, you have to show it, you have to do it. You have to take sensitization forward in our groups and family for multiply effect. So think of saying it once, showing it once, doing it once, and see the influence that it has as a multiplier effect on your friends, your family, your community. Be vocal about it. And for the last one, let's just talk about the importance of events such as Vannam, which is this event out here, and how these are so important in creating awareness in public regarding the importance of inclusivity of LGBT+ community in the industry.
Right. Yes, Vijay. I also, as you were speaking, right, I remembered we used to have our yearly refresher trainings on Gable and have conversations after the trainings on how do we promote equality and inclusion within our own teams. So I think just the culture of having an open conversation about Gable and inclusivity makes everyone feel that they're bringing their whole self to work and feel satisfied and happy in the day-to-day activities, right? So that being said, Vijay, thank you so much for your time that you've decided to invest with us. And it was really great having you on this particular first time, one of a kind collaborative event between P&G and IIT Madras, the IIT Madras P&G Equality Summit. Thank you so much, Vijay. Thank you for sparing time with us.
Pooja, thank you. And I want to say thank you again to the entire audience. This is valuable time that you give to us. And we really, and I personally really do appreciate it.
Right. Thank you, everyone.